It happened 6 summers ago, and there hasn't been a single week since that I haven't thought about it. I was 23 at the time, fresh out of college and working a temporary remote job that gave me more flexibility than stability. My name's Owen Michaels, and I've always had a strange fascination with isolation. Not in the loner kind of way, but in the way where solitude makes everything sharper. The wind through pine trees, the sound of your own heartbeat, the subtle rustle of something or someone just beyond the trees. That's why I decided to spend a long weekend deep in Montana's Bitterroot Range. It was a spur-of-the-moment idea. I'd seen an online post about forgotten trails that only the most daring hikers even attempted, and I picked one with barely any footprint on Google Maps. No cell signal, no established campsites. It was exactly what I wanted. I wasn't a survivalist, but I wasn't clueless either. I'd grown up hiking with my dad and had taken several solo trips in state forests. I knew the rules. Pack light but smart. Stay aware. Leave no trace. I drove my truck down a winding service road until I couldn't go any further, then parked it near a rock wall. The trail started off narrow and got even narrower, winding up into pine-thick slopes and steep ridges. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that makes your ears strain for sound. By late afternoon, I found a perfect clearing nestled above a slope. A creek ran just below, and beyond the trees, the sky opened into a breathtaking view of snow-dusted peaks. I pitched my tent near a fallen log, gathered stones for a fire ring, and heated up some freeze-dried chili. Everything felt perfect in that moment. Just me, nature, and the soft hum of solitude. As night settled in, the forest darkened fast. My fire crackled steadily, offering light and warmth, while the stars bloomed above me in a way you only get in the backcountry. I lay back on my sleeping mat near the fire and stared at the Milky Way, feeling small and content. That was when I heard the first crunch, dry leaves and twigs breaking underfoot. A pause, then another. Crunch, crunch. The hair on my neck stood up. These weren't the scampering sounds of deer or the low padding of a bear. These were footsteps, human footsteps. I sat up slowly, flashlight in hand, sweeping it across the forest line. And that's when I saw him. A man standing just at the edge of the tree line, facing me. The firelight distorted the shadows, so I couldn't make out his face clearly. He had a backpack, worn clothes, and his posture was strange, rigid, but not threatening. He stared for a moment, then spoke. "Sorry," he said, barely above a whisper. Then, just as silently, he turned and walked back into the woods. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. My mind raced through questions. Who the hell was he? Why was he here? And why the hell did he whisper sorry like that? There were no trails nearby, no cars, no lights, nothing but trees and darkness. I should have packed up right then, but I told myself he was just a hiker who lost the trail, or maybe he saw my fire and wanted to make sure he wasn't stumbling onto a bear. I tried to push the encounter out of my mind. Eventually, I convinced myself to lie down again. I didn't sleep. Hours passed. The fire died low. Clouds rolled in, blanketing the stars. The air grew colder. I wrapped myself in my sleeping bag, listening to every creak, every snap. Then I heard it again. Footsteps. Faster. Heavier. I jumped up, grabbing the flashlight again. The beam cut through the darkness just in time to catch movement. The same man. Only this time, he wasn't calm. He burst into the clearing, face slick with sweat, eyes wide and frantic. His beard was patchy, his hands trembling. He looked like he'd been running for miles through rough terrain. "Hey," I said cautiously, raising my free hand. "Are you okay?" He didn't answer right away. He was panting hard, scanning the forest behind me. "Are you lost?" I asked. "I can help. I've got a radio. Water too." "No," he finally said. "Didn't mean to bother you." But his eyes kept flicking to my right, always to my right. "You're camping here?" he asked suddenly. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, just for the weekend." He took a few steps closer. I could see dirt smeared on his cheek, his lips cracked from dehydration. "Is it just you?" he asked. I hesitated. "Yes." "Where are the others?" "There are no others," I said, feeling a tight knot form in my chest. Then he asked, "Have you been following me?" That chilled me. Number, I've been here all day. He stared again over my shoulder. Longer this time. His face turned pale. Then he said, "Then why are you with her?" I whipped around, shining the flashlight into the darkness. Nothing. Just trees and blackness. When I turned back, the man's expression had shifted from fear to sheer terror. His eyes bulged. His mouth twitched. Then, without another word, he spun around and bolted into the forest, disappearing into the night. I stood frozen, heart hammering. My skin crawled, my legs locked. I looked behind me again. Still nothing, but I didn't care. I grabbed my pack, kicked dirt over the fire, and ran. The trail back to my truck felt longer than before. Every sound made me jump. The trees seemed to close in tighter. I thought I heard breathing behind me. Once, I thought I saw movement in the corner of my eye, something pale darting between trees. I didn't stop. When I finally reached the truck, I slammed the door shut, locked it, and sat in the cab, shaking. I didn't drive away for a full 15 minutes. I just sat there, waiting for something to emerge from the tree line. Nothing did. The next morning, I drove to the ranger station. I told them everything. They took notes, but I could tell they were humoring me. No missing persons, no reports, just a hiker who maybe got turned around, or maybe high, or maybe something else. In the weeks that followed, I scoured forums, wilderness threads, even Reddit. A few stories sounded eerily similar, but none were identical. One user suggested the man had been hallucinating from dehydration and paranoia. Another said it could have been a shared psychosis, a term I hadn't heard before. But that's not what stuck with me. What stuck with me was his voice, the way he whispered that question. "Then why are you with her?" It implied something I still can't wrap my head around. It wasn't just that he thought I was with someone. It was that he believed someone was with me. Someone I couldn't see. Someone who terrified him. I've had nightmares about it. In some of them, I turn around and there is someone standing behind me. A woman in a tattered white dress, face shadowed, eyes hollow. In others, I'm the one running, and she's following me. I've never gone solo camping since. I still hike, still explore, but never alone, and never without a second pair of eyes, because the forest isn't always empty, and sometimes you're not alone, even when you think you are. It was a rainy Thursday in early October, the kind where the skies stay gray for hours and the air hangs heavy with silence. My name is Elliot Graves, 32 years old, and I was working from home in a quiet neighborhood just outside Salem, Massachusetts. I'd put off a batch of overdue project reports for too long and had no choice but to pull an all-nighter to get them finished. At around 10 p.m., I brewed my first strong cup of coffee, climbed the stairs to my home office, and closed the door behind me. The glow of my desk lamp and laptop screen were the only light in the room. I dove into the work, typing with increasing focus, sipping coffee as the night deepened. It felt almost meditative until the fatigue crept in. By 1 a.m., my energy began to fade. I rubbed my eyes, stretched, and decided to head downstairs for a second cup. As I descended, I noticed the air felt colder. Not just cooler from the drop in temperature outside, but cold, unnatural, like someone had opened every window in the house. The thermostat still read 71 degrees Fahrenheit, yet the chill was undeniable. A bit unnerved, I stepped into the living room and paused. One of the rear windows, one I could have sworn I closed earlier, was wide open, not cracked, not ajar, fully open. Rain speckled the hardwood floor beneath it. I stood there for several seconds, heart beginning to pound. I often opened windows during the day, but never this wide. I leaned out, scanned the ground. No footprints, no drag marks, just soaked grass and leaves. I tried to convince myself that I had simply forgotten, that I'd left it like that in a fog of work stress. Still, it didn't sit right. I shut the window, locked it, grabbed my coffee, and returned upstairs. But even as I resumed working, the unease wouldn't go away. Something about the air, the window, the silence outside, it gnawed at me. Half an hour passed, and I couldn't concentrate. My mind kept drifting back to the possibility, however irrational, that someone had been inside. So I did a quick sweep of the house, checked the closets, behind the shower curtain, under the bed. Nothing. Just as I was about to dismiss it all and return to my work, it happened. A loud thump. Not from outside. From inside, directly behind the wall of my desk. I froze. That wall shared space with the guest bedroom. The sound was heavy, like something solid hitting wood or drywall. I rose slowly, heart hammering in my chest. I opened the hallway door and crept to the guest room. It looked normal. I stepped in. Nothing on the floor. No fallen frames. The closet was shut. Everything was in place. I even checked under the bed, expecting to see a dropped box or something out of place. Nothing. I returned to the office, deeply unsettled. I couldn't explain the noise. My heart refused to settle. 15 minutes later, my focus finally snapped. I spun my chair around and stared at the wall, searching for logic. And then I remembered. The narrow closet just behind me. A thin storage space I hadn't used in months. I used to throw in jackets and old scarves, forgotten, dusty things, curious, and needing closure. I stood and walked over to it. I pulled open the door. I cannot describe the sensation of coming face to face with someone who should not be there. Inches away from me, hidden behind layers of hanging jackets, stood a man. His eyes met mine immediately, pale, wide, and still. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, and pressed into the corner of the closet. If not for the clothes between us, he could have reached out and grabbed me in one motion. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I stumbled backward as he lunged forward, ripping through the closet in a flurry of motion. I bolted out the office door and into the hallway, feet slipping on the hardwood. And that's when he said it. He called my name. Elliot. It wasn't a voice I recognized. It was low, ragged, and coarse, like gravel scraping glass. But he knew my name. That's what terrified me more than anything. I didn't look back. I sprinted out the front door barefoot into the cold rain. I didn't stop until I reached my neighbor's house, banging on their door until they answered. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the house, top to bottom. No sign of forced entry. No man. No wet footprints. No broken closet door. They questioned whether I had dreamt it, hallucinated it from exhaustion. I insisted otherwise. But here's the part that still paralyzes me. After reviewing security footage from my porch camera, the police told me something I hadn't noticed. Between 10:58 p.m. and 11:04 p.m., just minutes after I brewed my first cup of coffee, a man had walked up the driveway. He didn't go to the door. He went around the house and never came out. No other cameras caught him leaving. The window had been open since then, which means while I was working for hours upstairs, that man was already inside, in my house, watching, waiting. He knew my name. He knew I worked late, and I will never know how long he planned to wait, or what he would have done if I hadn't opened that closet. I haven't spent a night in that house since, and I never pull all-nighters anymore. It was just 3 weeks ago, a Saturday night in late fall, with a biting chill in the air and most trees stripped bare of their leaves. My name is Marcus Lane. I'm 27 and live in a small apartment near the outskirts of Richmond, Virginia. I usually kept my weekends quiet, but this time was different. My close friend Chelsea had planned a small birthday gathering, just a few drinks and conversation with old friends. I left my place around 6:45 p.m. and arrived at Chelsea's house within 10 minutes. Her home sat tucked into a quiet neighborhood, one of those places with winding streets and hardly any streetlights. The evening was casual. We talked, laughed, shared a few drinks. Nothing loud, nothing crazy. Just that cozy kind of social gathering where hours pass before you notice the clock. By around 1:15 a.m., most of the group had left or crashed in the living room. I never liked sleeping at other people's houses. No matter how tired or tipsy I was, I always preferred my own bed. Driving wasn't an option after the drinks, so I figured I'd just walk. I'd done it before. 25 minutes tops through suburban silence. Chelsea waved from the porch, reminding me I could leave my car there till morning. I zipped up my jacket, tucked my hands into my pockets, and began the walk home. The night air was sharp but still. The road stretched ahead, empty of motion or sound. About 5 minutes in, I began to notice how completely silent the neighborhood was. Not a dog barking, not a TV humming behind closed windows. It felt too still. Then, I saw headlights. A car turned onto the road behind me, slow moving, dim lights. I stepped slightly to the side of the street. The vehicle coasted toward me, then rolled to a stop just a few feet away. The driver cracked their window just an inch. "You good, man? Need a ride?" It was a man's voice, middle-aged maybe, calm. I gave a quick wave. "I'm good, thanks. Just walking." He didn't say anything else, just drove off slowly. It felt off, but I told myself he was just being kind. I continued walking, passing a row of dark houses, each one seemingly asleep. A few minutes passed before I noticed light glinting off a metal sign ahead of me. Reflexively, I turned to glance back, and my stomach dropped. The same car, coming from the opposite direction now. It crept along again, then pulled over, this time just stopping, engine idling. The driver didn't roll the window down again, didn't say a word, just stayed parked, watching. I walked faster, heart beating harder. I kept checking over my shoulder. He never got out. Eventually, his car disappeared behind me again. Now I was on edge. Everything felt suspicious. The silence had gone from eerie to suffocating. About 10 minutes from home, I reached a familiar crossroads. To the right, the road continued toward my apartment. To the left, a shortcut. A park trail that cut through a strip of woods. I rarely used it. No lights, narrow dirt path, totally isolated. But tonight, with a car possibly following me, it seemed safer than staying on the open street. That is, until I looked ahead. The car was there, parked directly in the middle of the road, headlights on, engine running, no hazard lights, just there, like it had been waiting. I stopped. My throat tightened. The trail entrance was only a few feet behind the car. If I went that way, I'd pass dangerously close to him. If I stayed on the road, I'd walk directly toward his car. I didn't like either option. But then something strange happened. The driver turned off the engine. The lights stayed on, but the soft rumble disappeared. I held my breath, inching forward. I passed the trail without turning into it. I couldn't risk it. Something deep in my gut told me the woods were exactly where he wanted me to go. As I reached the car's front bumper, I glanced inside. It was empty. My blood ran cold. The engine had just shut off seconds ago. The lights were still on, yet no one was behind the wheel. Panic surged through me. I spun around, scanning the trees, and then I saw him, standing between two thick trunks, not 20 feet from the trail entrance, was a man, just standing, perfectly still, watching me. I didn't wait. I broke into a sprint, feet slamming the pavement. My phone was in my hand before I realized it, fingers fumbling to unlock it. Behind me, I heard movement, not running, just motion, branches swaying, maybe breathing, maybe something more. As I turned onto a different street, I heard the car start again. He had looped around, circled me, tried to herd me into the trees. I dialed 911, breath ragged, trying to explain what just happened through gasps. The dispatcher kept me on the line until I reached my building. When the officers arrived, the car was gone. The woods were empty. They took my statement, but couldn't do much with it. No plate, no solid description, just a whisper of something planned, something practiced. I think about that night all the time now, about what would have happened if I'd gone into the trail, if I hadn't trusted that rising feeling of dread. He wasn't just passing through. He knew the roads. He knew where I'd turn. He knew I'd be walking home. And I'm certain he knew exactly where he wanted me to disappear.